Hello, everyone. Welcome to Business Over Brews. I've got a special guest, Paul Bongers, on today, and we're going to have a series of episodes where we walk you through different AI technologies and strategies that we've been experimenting with and deploying. My name's Chris. I've got about 18 years experience in marketing, 10 of those in product marketing. And I'm joined by Paul Bongers, who's been a VP of sales, VP of strategy, 15 plus years of experience. Paul, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're very welcome. Great to be here and talk some AI.
So today, for the first episode, I think it'd be best for us to share our top 3 AI tools that we've used up until today. What is your number one of those 3 so far?
Yeah, I think first of all, ask me again next week because whatever I'm going to say now, next week I'll discover something else.
Yeah.
There are so many tools that are being built and it's really hard to keep up with what's coming out. But what I've been impressed with last few weeks is Lovable. So
Yeah.
Lovable.dev. So they are it's like a vibe coding platform where I create a lot of technology and I used to work obviously a lot more with, I have an idea conceptually what I want the software to look like and what a UI needs to look like. And then I would have to talk to UX designers and then work with engineers who need to explain like, what is it exactly that I want to do? And now I go to Lovable and I just type in what I want and it just codes a front end for me right then and there. So my number one is definitely that. And
Pretty
what really
cool.
impressed me about Lovable was last week there was this little spat in The Guardian about, I loved it. Like there's an article from The Guardian that said that we need to, they basically wanted to say a good AI, but this day and age already, we should see AI being able to create a Pac-Man game from scratch. That it's kind of like
All
how
right.
there's like the Big Mac index out there that
Yeah.
kind of sets the standard for like how you can compare like how what pricing is or like how you have like the Turing test when you talk a bit more AI of like how do you test something if it's good enough or to a certain degree. And they basically say like, can I create a Pac-Man game? And they had a bunch of really terrible examples. And then I went to Lovable and put in a prompt saying, create a working Pac-Man game for me. And it just worked. And it was pretty good. Took
You
me
know,
3 prompts, 3 minutes.
I got to ask you though, one thing you shared that article with me, and one thing you didn't detail. How did the article summarize how AI was doing based on their test? They were pretty demeaning, weren't they?
They basically said like it's not really good enough. AI is not there yet. And they showed some screenshots of what some of these games look like that others tried to create with AI, and they look very wonky. And for me, what it just shows is even the folks at the Guardian are not aware of all the technology that's currently out there. One of the biggest challenges in these AI tools for coding is actually the debugging aspect of it. A lot of tools can code, but then they will make some mistakes in the code and then they won't know how to figure it out. And these folks from Lovable, they seem to be onto something where it can kind of like untangle itself and it can start to debug itself. Is it
Nice.
perfect? No, but it's mightily impressive.
Well, you've shown me it a few times. It's great. I've tested it myself. It's a great tool to just kind of build an interface, get some user experience examples together. It does it from quick prompts. I've been pretty impressed with it.
Yeah. So what about you? What's your number one?
So I have to go the tried and true kind of lame, not to call it lame because it's an amazing tool, but ChatGPT, I can't get enough of it. I keep on finding new ways and new reasons to use it. In a prior episode here on this channel, I did share a custom GPT that I had built to help our sales team answer questions, do competitive differentiation, and prospect faster and more accurately. And I'm finding so many different tools for it. So if I need to do translations, it's helped me
Mm.
with that. If I need to do summarizations or specific competitive differentiators based on very unique personas, use cases, competitors, and scenarios, which are kind of use cases, it's been instrumental in getting me 70% there to answer these questions and build these assets. And even Even more recently, I had to create a brief before a meeting to address a sales challenge with a certain product of ours, and I was trying to figure out ways to just like, do I do the problem definition first? Do I do an overview of where we are first? You know what I did instead? I used just the Notes app on the Mac to record me telling the story. And then I took the transcript of that and I dumped it into ChatGPT and I just said, please summarize this story in bullet points based on what are the current challenges, where are the opportunities, what are the tasks we need to do to achieve these goals, which I described. And it just put them all in one quick document that I was then able to fire out to the team to review before we met. It's a great way to just summarize a meeting brief. So I'm just finding new ways to use the tools at work and personally. You know what I mean? How about yourself?
I,
Have you
I
used
I
it?
I think it's really impressive. I see you work with ChatGPT, and I think I haven't really come across many people who maximize these feature sets that are being delivered, right? Like,
Yeah.
because technically, like ChatGPT has been delivering all kinds of bells and whistles in addition to the core chat function, which they came out with a few years ago. Like now you can build your own bots and like, like all of these kind of things. And I'm seeing you really maximizing the feature set. Like what you get out of $20 a month is pretty amazing.
I'm, if I wasn't paying for it out of pocket for my personal stuff, I'd upgrade to the $200 a month. But it's just I can't justify it yet for my personal needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's number one. What's your number two go-to app?
Well, actually, my number two is kind of like a mix of generally using AI for any kind of search. My starting point, I actually used to work in SEO
Yeah.
for a long time. So for me, like Google and all of the search engine developments, all the way from Ask Jeeves through where we are today with Perplexity, I've been very closely monitoring it. I've been working in it, working with experts in the field. And so for me, search, I understand how these things work. And in the last, I think the last 3, 4 months, I've been working exclusively on AI projects, and I've deliberately become an AI native. Um, I think the best way to get good at building any kind of AI tools or being an understanding is try to get yourself into that 1% of expert or like heavy user in the world on using AI. Try to find a problem that you want to solve and try to solve it with AI only. Find all of the other tools. So I find I use Claude a lot for like the coding style side. Well, Lovable and Claude. Claude is great, especially the new models around HTML coding and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
I use Gemini. I think is really good for writing. Generally, I think I like the way that it tells the story really well. Um, I use ChatGPT actually a little bit less and as more deliberate because ChatGPT was the first one out there. And in the same, I do use it less for the same reason that I sometimes switch my search engine to Bing or any of the other ones because I kind of want to see what the others are doing. I've used ChatGPT for a year and a half straight and see what the others do, and I find that they have their own strength. And then Perplexity. So if I want to solve a problem, I start with Perplexity because it gives me a quick insight of where things are. I don't have to do too much work for that. And then I use, for example, like Gemini to write me a prompt. If I want an AI to really do something, I don't ask it to do it. I first ask it like, write me a good prompt. And here's like my blurt of like what I want. And then it writes like a really detailed prompt. It's like, okay, now execute that. Or I go to Claude if it's more code related, and if I stay in Gemini for that. But for
Nice.
me, I feel like I have the world really at my fingertips. If I look at what Google set out to do back in the late 90s with their mission of making the whole world's information universally accessible and available, I think right now it's never been as so much on your fingertips as it has ever been before. It's amazing.
It's a as you talk about tools like Perplexity and Claude, I've yet to really get involved with too much, just because I'm able to use GPT for most of my use, OpenAI's tools for most of my use cases. But when I think about Perplexity, I've used Perplexity a bit, which is ultimately the search version of these AI tools. I haven't gone full into these tools yet for a couple of reasons. One, there is a search capability available in GPT, but two, I don't understand the longevity of Perplexity's business model almost. If you look at how Google's moved forward, it went from organize capturing all of the world's data and make it easily searchable. And then once it was easily searchable, we built an audience that depended on that information. And then once we had the audience, we started advertising to that audience with paid clicks. And now that we've got all these paid clicks and we have to experiment with AI, we're now giving people AI overviews that remove them from the click, that stop people from you, that really hurt the people who are supposed to be buying the solution from you to click through to get to a page. Why would I do that when I get an AI overview? And I think about how Perplexity might handle this. They could go the route of sponsored content, but how will they disclose that? How do you, at what point are they truthful about how much a paid source is influencing the answer that they're giving you? And it's those are the questions I don't know or have good answers to. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
It's yeah, absolutely. So what I did lately, you can change your default search engine in like Google Chrome.
Yeah.
So you can also just set
There's
up
a
Perplexity
there's
as your
a
default.
antitrust lawsuit against that, if I remember correctly, with Apple.
Yeah, that was a little again a little spat going on.
I think
But
it's
we
still
won't go
going
into
on.
it here. But you can just basically set up Perplexity as your
Yeah.
default search engine. And I tried it for a while, and I actually reverted back to Google. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times when I use the search bar, or basically just like the URL bar, like
Yeah.
the taskbar in your browser, I realize that more than half of the time I use it to navigate directly to a website where I know I want to be. Because I'm very like cloud native in that sense of
Yeah.
I don't really have many desktop apps that I use. I actually almost everything I do is web based. So I go to websites a lot. All the tools I use are in my browser. But if I like type and I want to go to whatever tool, I type it into my search bar there, and it thinks and Perplexity thinks that I'm searching for information about that tool. It's like no, I just wanted to go there. And I think if you have Google as a search engine, it just does that a little bit better. Um, but generally, though, what's happened is the what you said about search is very true. We built out a whole business of advertising because they had almost like the monopoly to getting access to the world's information.
Yeah.
The reason why people put up with it is because it's just an extra step that they need to get through to get to their information. There was no better alternative. Enter Perplexity when it comes to informative searches. So really more top of the funnel awareness kind of stuff. People don't care about the ads. Google cares about the ads. People don't. Like they just want to get to the answer as fast as possible. And Google has tried to do this over the years with the people also asked, and would trying to give like direct answers, even like quote certain snippets, which was a lawsuit on its own. And now here comes Perplexity, where like if you start an informational journey, then that's where you can really start. And it's killing the ad business, which leaves Google with more of the navigational and the transactional searches of, I already know which website I want to go to is navigational, or transactional. I already know what I want to buy. I just want to find it. But even then, people don't go to Google. They go to Amazon. They go to wherever the platform is where they buy stuff.
Yep.
If you want to have some power tool, you just go directly to the Lowe's or Home Depot website.
Well, I'll be
So
honest.
it's being disrupted pretty hard.
100%. In the like, I'm in that same scenario where sorry, I got to get to my number two tool, but I run into that scenario too, where I will use if I'm looking for a product, I don't Google it anymore because oftentimes when I do Google something for that product, I will see insanely lower prices than what I'm seeing in Amazon. But when I go to those marketplaces, they're sketchy, or the shipping is making up for the lost or the savings that I was getting in the product. I've never really been led to a better buying experience or a truly cheaper product from a site that I trust by Googling for a product that I'm physically looking to buy as opposed to just buying it on Amazon.
Right. It's very true.
So yeah,
So
sorry. Let's
you're
let
number two.
number two. I'm gonna have to go with Notebook LM so far. It's been one of the best ways for me to learn and come up to speed fastest on tools. Again, it's a Google product that was introduced, I think, about 6 or 7 months ago. Everyone knows it because of the very impressive, lifelike sounding podcasters. I guarantee we're real. I have a real face. Paul, you're real, right? You're not an avatar. Yes, correct.
I'm
As far as we know, yeah, right. It was super impressive to hear how you could take a document, any document, the most boring documents, regulatory guidelines that you could ever picture, put them into Notebook LM, have it understand those documents, and then create a podcast of 5, 10, 20 minutes of two real life sounding AI bots having a casual conversation, adding in different words and frequency, things like, hey, what's really funny? And then explain something. That's not something you expect an AI to say or to start a conversation with. But I've used it to come up to speed on things like the new consumer duty, regulatory, the European Accessibility Act, heavily regulatory areas that I need to learn about to help the people I work for. And it's been instrumental in getting me up to speed fast in conveying that information in a way that's easy for me to digest and retain.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's amazing. What I think is really interesting about NotebookLM and the conceptual part of that is that we've been talking a lot about like, oh, you need to get your data, your knowledge in like a good shape, and so that AI knows like uses the right information in RAG and stuff.
Yeah.
And interestingly, we're shifting that actually AI is getting so good that you don't really need to worry too much about the underlying data as long as the AI knows what to pull out. It's a paradigm shift already happening, and we're just a few years into in this accelerated, disruptive industry change.
Truly.
But I every time I have notes about meetings or whatever, I don't curate them anymore. I dump it all in a document, unformatted, and then I just use NotebookLM to just ask questions about it. Like I don't need to go and read information anymore. It's kind of like why I use Perplexity over Google. I don't want to
Yeah.
find the article with the source so I can read what's going on and figure it out for myself. I can
Yeah.
go straight to the answer if I just have the data in NotebookLM.
And that's where, like, to your point, these LLMs are still getting so much better at understanding unstructured, improperly formatted content. But the thing you still always have to look out for is if there's wrong information in that data, like you're already going to have to worry about hallucinations of what gets generated from these LLMs. But if the information in there is wrong, the LLM's not going to correct that. It will regenerate and regurgitate wrong information. So, yes, it'll help figure out unstructured content in an easier way for it to reference through RAG, but you still have to make sure that that data is properly correct, is not using incorrect terms or phrasing or what would be considered bad regulatory guidelines or guidance, which can always be a challenge.
Still, like if I'm trying to solve that challenge,
Yeah.
um, I'm not going to focus anymore on figuring out the world's content problem because I think that's outdated thinking. I think the challenge is focus on the AI because that is where a lot of potential still lies. And these LLMs are getting better and better. There's a new model every week almost from whatever company. And I think the answer is more likely in the new technology than trying to sort out the mess of the past. The mess of the past is what it is. And there's a lot of legacy, especially if you have like big companies that have like every department has their own content repository in different places and it's all siloed and some things are from the 90s and some things are like from 5 years ago. It's a huge mess, and I think it will take more time to sort out the mess
Yeah.
than it reminds me of when I was a kid and my bedroom was always a mess according to my parents. In my mind this was highly structured. I knew exactly which Lego piece was behind the leg of my bed.
Yep.
Right, and so you can say like, hey, sort out your room, clean it up because nobody will be able to do something in this. Is like, that's not true. If I am the AI, send me into that room and I'll get for you exactly what you need because I know what's going on in here.
Nice. No, I feel you. I was a very disorganized child myself. Let's go to number three. I know we're kind of coming up on time here. What
Yeah.
is your number three
I might
AI
be
tool?
stealing your thunder here, but I'm gonna pick Granola AI.
Ooh, that is one of my favorites, but you go ahead with
Oh
that.
yes, Granola.ai. So it's a note taker for meetings,
Yeah.
and a couple of things that I'm a design thinker, so I like to look at like what are the real user problems that we see. And like there's been a lot of apps in note taking.
Yeah.
Like it's even crazy. Like every time I get onto some kind of like public roundtable online, like a webinar thing, the first 3 minutes is the hosts kicking out all the note taking apps. You know, it's just absolutely nuts. So what I like about Granola is a few things. I think one, they show with these two things, they show that there is a way to create a differentiator in an increasingly crowded space.
Yes.
Why? Granola just records your computer audio. So it doesn't need to be integrated with a Zoom or with a Google Meet or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
on your computer. It runs in the background. Nobody even knows you're recording. You should technically just say you are recording it. But That's one thing. So it's
You
to
always
set
want to
it up.
disclose if you're recording a conversation, of course.
Right. But if you want to set it up, it doesn't matter what laptop you have, it doesn't matter what tools you use, you just install it and it works.
Yep.
Done. That's that because that's one real user problem. Getting
Yeah.
these note takers to set up and be integrated. Oh, and then the compatibility with Zoom breaks when there's a new version of Zoom. Like, no, Granola doesn't have that. Secondly, and the most important one, they have perfected the meeting summaries. They
Yep.
have the summaries that come out of that are, I know Gong has been trying to do this for like 10 years, and there's so many other ones that I've seen in a try, like Zoom's AI assistant is trying to do it. A lot of them is just too much noise. What they do
Yep.
really well is they take it, maybe the transcript of it, but they really restructure. You can go in a conversation left and right over an hour, and if you say something about the same topic in the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, it will syndicate that and bring that together under the same bullet point and keep it short and sweet.
Nice.
While the app, when you have it open, it's also a note-taking app. So you can just
Yeah.
take your notes as you're thinking about something. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be related. And then Granola, after you're done, will automatically put your thoughts directly into that summary and show you where that is. Absolutely amazing. Can't live
Yep.
without it.
So I'm here's what I'm going to do. I second you on that on granola. I've been using it since you've introduced me to it. I absolutely love it. So instead, I'm going to ask two more questions, not to throw a curveball at you. First one is going to be, what is the most underrated AI tool that you've been using, or overrated? What is the most overrated AI tool that everyone's like, this should be the best, and you've used it, and it's like, this is just meh, nothing.
Ooh, that's really hard. Hard to pick one. But generally, what I find is, in terms of overrated, it's usually the same pattern. The pattern is, a company or a technology that has been in the same technology for such a long time, and they make the mistake of like, oh, we just need to wrap some AI around it. We need to stuff AI in here.
Mm.
AI is not an add-on. AI is something that it can inherently do tasks better than previous technologies could. So if I see companies that just add a chunk of AI to it, it's just that doesn't fit. Look at what your value proposition is and really do something new. So I find mostly, like, if you look at like like for example, like Zoom's AI summaries,
Yeah.
like, that needs work. And you see that the new kids on the block, without any hesitation, they build better technology straight up. If I look at the Zoom meeting notes, like we work across many different time zones, so you miss a bunch of meetings. It's great to get the meeting summary from Zoom, fantastic. But then I get a very serious meeting thing. Is like, well, Charlie was concerned about his canary being slightly ill this yesterday. Like, you get all of that noise in there. Like, and this is kind of like, I expect better, and it just goes to
Yeah.
show that it's an add-on and it's not your core focus.
Well, so that's seeing. I've seen some of these AI summaries from Zoom as your example, and I like to think I'm funny, but I'll crack jokes here and there in some of my meetings. And when you read them over, it just doesn't sound right, especially when they're included. Like if they have nothing to do with the topic, you're just kind of breaking the ice to get the conversations going. It always, I'm like, wow. If I hope that's not what I sound like, but it's it's one of those where anything you say can really just be used against you in a court of law, not to bring back law and order, but it just things don't seem to fly right, or at least I don't enjoy the summarizations that we do see from Zoom. So far, my most overrated tool right now, I'd have to say, is Dolly, the image generation tool from OpenAI. I was using that for a while, trying to replace my need for stock photography. If I'm using it in videos and whatnot, I just can't generate anything that looks real enough that doesn't look worse than the stock photography that I'd already be using. So I'm still using stock photography tools to generate any or to find the tools or the images or videos or sounds that I need. I just haven't had good luck using Dolly to generate stuff like that. But now I'm going to ask you one final question, which is, what AI tool scares you the most?
Hmm.
Put you on the spot here with that one.
Yeah, that is a really good question. Scares me the most. Not necessarily scare, but like, I've gone through the stages of grief almost that AI has. I think the change is very real and it's going to
Oh yeah.
be very impactful. Um, and I think it's more like a development that is just really, really awesome, with just from the way of like I'm in awe of it, and that is um, the ability for AI agents to really work together.
Yeah.
Like that interconnectivity, there's a lot of new technology being developed where like AIs can do tool calling upon each other, um, and what you're getting to are independent task doers who can give each other tasks and come out with real outcomes.
Yeah.
And that is going to be so disruptive. If I look turn that around, I hear a lot of people, there's a lot of skeptics on the internet, and there's a lot of folks talking about, well, AI, it's not really that good because back to the Pac-Man example, they're like, because it cannot take rebuild Pac-Man, so we're all good, you know?
Today,
And today, yes.
you know.
And I find a lot of people find solace in that. I think a lot of people need that kind of like calming down comfort zone of like, okay, we're good, I can breathe. But the reality is it's going super fast.
Yeah.
And if I hear people saying like, or give examples of like, well, because the AI cannot do this and this and this yet, I'm like, wait a few weeks because it might just.
Absolutely.
Now, someone said it the other day, and I loved how they explained this. Like, it's about like, is this going to be like super intelligence, whatever? And someone told me, it's like, this is not going to be Terminator, but it will be Iron Man.
Ooh, very interesting. With Jarvis, I believe. Is it
With
Jarvis?
Jarvis
Yeah.
being in a suit, but it's still you doing it, right? You need to go and
For
fight
now.
off the bad guys. And but this thing will make us turn us into much more Iron Man.
Mm,
And that means that if there's any advice that I can give anybody out there is don't sit back and relax and go back to doing your Googling,
yeah.
because you will be caught out. The time is now to start diving into these AI tools. Get yourself familiar with it. Don't be afraid of them,
Yeah.
but start using them. Try to solve end-to-end problems, and you will start figuring out for yourself what it's already good at, where it actually kind of still lacks, and it gives you much more of an idea. Whatever the job is that you are doing, find out how AI could help you. Because if you are AI native, if you can speak AI, you got a job.
That's best advice that I've been giving to anyone that has asked me about what they should be looking into with AI. And it's the reason my oldest is 9 years old, and I'm starting to get him used to understanding how do I write a prompt and ask a question into an LLM to get an answer? And then how do I verify that that answer is accurate? Education is the only way to keep moving forward on this. So that's
I
it.
even taught my parents,
Yeah.
and they are now planning road trips using Gemini. So I'm
Ooh,
very
very
proud.
nice. So I'm gonna so my the scariest tool I'm looking at right now has to be Sora or other video generation tools.
Hmm.
The reason is because if have you seen the video of it's the Will Smith eating spaghetti index or benchmark. Someone did a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. I'll see if I can throw it up on screen here about a year or two ago. And it looks obviously fake and horrendous. And then everyone's throwing their arms up like, ha ha, it can't do it. Don't worry about generative AI or don't worry about this kind of stuff. 8 months later, the new version of that benchmark still can be identified as AI, but looks so much better. It's a lot harder to see the mistakes that are in there. Oh, sorry, I thought I saw a blip here real quick. But the thing is, we're getting into a world where it's going to be indistinguishable at some point soon. And then you have the argument of when it's open source and you're using like Flux on like Savati, if you're using an open source local version of a tool like this, how do they govern to make sure that you're either properly disclosing what you're doing is AI generated so people know it's fake? How do you enforce those rules? I'm really worried. This is the concern of a lot of folks, especially when it comes to politicians and elections and just generally. How are we going to identify what is the true from the fake when it comes to these videos? That is what horrifies or scares me in the future because there's no real good plan yet and there's no great actions we can take yet other than to talk through education. And that's still just the first of many steps we got to take. So that's where I get scared. How do we know real from fake?
Right.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Paul and I would love to know, what are your top 1, 2, or 3 AI tools? And would also love to know, what do you think is a meh tool and what honestly scares the pants off you? Paul, thank you again so much for joining. We'll catch all of you on our next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you. See you later.